Welcome back to the Gabagools podcast, episode 34. The Walter Payton, for all you Chicago Bears fans. With me today is the Cuzzo. How we feeling today?
Feeling light, feeling loose, feeling limber. Got up, took the dog for a walk. Did a little stretching today. I'm getting older. Everyone, you start getting a little bit older, and you're like, hey, my body feels a little, I'm aching after I, just go for a little walk. So did some stretching, got out there. It's only about 55 today. The sun has unfortunately gone away. That one song from I don't know if it's the Beatles or I forget who it is, but hey there, Mr. Blue, one of those. But we got the dog out today. She did her thing. It was for me. I don't even mind when it's like 55, 60, especially coming
Yeah,
from this summer was obviously a little hot. So nice
yeah,
out there today, and yeah, I'm ready.
awesome. Yeah, you mentioned getting older. Obviously, we have I'd be remiss to not mention your birthday coming up on Wednesday, right?
Oh boy, no, it's mañana.
Tomorrow, even better, Tuesday. Well, happy early birthday from the Gabagools podcast, and everyone shout you out in the comments. So, enough pleasantries, and we'll have to jump into some sports here. Just a real quick note. I know we don't touch on the NBA all that much, but for you bull fans out there, long awaited return. Lonzo Ball is supposed to play slash like I think it's play in the Wednesday game. For preseason, so you know, it's good to have him out there. You pay him all that money, so I mean, it doesn't hurt.
When we brought him over a couple years ago, I was excited because he's kind of one of those pass first point guards that, it seemed like adding him with Levine and Vooch, and then we had DeRozan. It's like, okay, now you've got a facilitator to get
Yeah,
these guys who are all scorers, get them the ball. And, it seemed like it could be a match made in heaven. Unfortunately, that has not happened. Lonzo hasn't been able to stay on the court the last like 2 years at least, but
yeah,
you hit the nail on the head. When he's out there, he's a pretty solid player. So I'm sure the Bulls, for they gave him some cash. I'm sure they'd like to see their investment pay off a little bit. But as far as the Bulls go, I don't even really know what to think of the Bulls. I'd like to see Lonzo out there this year. Obviously, you don't want to see anybody injured, but
right.
yeah, that was interesting news. I heard that too, and I was like, "Oh my God, is he still playing? Like, what's going
Yeah,
on?"
and it's gonna be It's gonna be like this big documentary or whatever by the end of this year if he actually comes back and plays well. Like the trials and tribulations as they call it. I think it's how you say it. About how he had to fight to come back. But I mean, I want him on the court. I want LeVar courtside just to bring the whole the Jerry circus back to the Bulls. I don't really have much expectations for the Bulls this year. Levine, does he want to be here? Does he not want to be here? That's going to be the big key. Obviously, you got Patrick Williams, Kobe White, Josh Giddey. He's going to be out there. Alonzo Ball, Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White. I think I mentioned him already. And then, like you said, Vooch. They drafted Mateus. I can't even say that cat's name.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can, but like Mateus Buzla, whatever.
yeah,
Um,
that's good enough.
yeah, he's a rookie. He was actually supposed. I mean, granted, I think we talked about the NBA draft being so poor this year, but he was supposed to be a top 5 pick going into it, and then he ended up falling to us. So hopefully it turns out and we end up being a 500 team again. So we'll see.
I heard something. I forget who it was. Someone was just talking on a podcast or something recently, I think, and they mentioned this kid that we took, and they said like, watch out for this kid. He's going to be a lot better than
Yeah,
most people think. So, you know what? Hopefully that's the case. The Bulls could definitely use another guy on their team, especially with no DeMar this year. So, hopefully.
Yeah, and speaking of the Bulls, Blackhawks, and White Sox, because the Jerry Reinsdorf committee, they created their own sports network, that CHSN. I have some gripes with them too. I'm going to be a very grumpy old man on it, but they're not on any of the streaming services. They don't have a contract, and currently they don't have a contract with Comcast either. So I don't know what you guys have by you, but They are only on DirecTV. So for those YouTube TV users, you can't watch any of the local teams at all, except for the Bears on Sundays or whenever, wherever else that you might find them. But it's just utterly ridiculous that the way that the regional TV deals have been done. It's ridiculous because you can't watch any of your teams. So like currently, you could the Blackhawks started and we still don't have it. Like we don't have any streaming. They're only with DirecTV, and I'm not going to go jump it when Comcast will probably come soon, probably by the time the Bulls kick off. But it's just really ridiculous that these money hungry billionaires
Yeah.
create their own network system, and then they're isolating of huge age range from probably 20 to 30. YouTube TV or Hulu Live or whatever is the new way of the world for streaming and whatnot. We're not using Comcast anymore because they're so expensive. And it's really upsetting that you can't even watch your own local. It reminds me of the early '90s the '90s with the Blackhawks where they were blacked out. You couldn't watch them on TV. You listen on the radio or you had to get your ass to the stadium.
Yeah, it's similar to what the Cubs did a few years ago with their marquee network. Everyone wants their own network. They want to make them more
Yeah,
money. They want to have all their, you know, I understand some of that, but it is so
yeah,
frustrating as a fan because I mean, even for us, we have Hulu, and they still don't have. Well, do they? I don't know. I don't know if they have a deal with Marquee. I don't think they do. They had
no,
something with
yeah,
DirecTV, but so we had like a friend that we've been able to kind of use, but um, it's funny. He just canceled his like the last month or two of the season because he was paying for it for a couple of years and didn't really want to anymore. And you can't blame him because it's a couple
yeah.
hundred even for that. And then, uh, especially for the Cubs, we were on WGN for like 80, 90 years or whatever. You could just turn it on. Think about
That
people who are older who don't know how to stream. They were watching their team for all these years, and now they're like, oh, now I have to get this service and do
yeah.
pay for this extra add on and all that. It's a bunch of crap.
What's funny too is that's why the Cubs actually like worldwide are one of the bigger teams that people are a fan of. Like it's not because they were like, some powerhouse team going through like forever. It's because WGN got picked up in like so many countries because it was
Yeah.
a worldwide network that people were able to stream or just like, it worked at like I don't know what other countries use, but they were able to watch the Cubs. And that's something I always remember too, is that they were able to, go in and watch them. And yeah, like you said, did they join Comcast at one point, or was it right from WGN to the Marquee Network? Because I don't remember.
Well,
It was
it was a couple years ago where they were kind of doing their last farewell for WGN. And I think they went from that to Marquee, and Marquee. I think, like I said, I think they're only on Direct TV. I don't know if they're
they're on
on.
Com- they're on
Oh,
Com-
they're on
they're
Comcast.
Xfinity, Comcast, whatever. They are on them because I remember they got that done. They got their deal done with Marquee Network like opening night of the Cubs
Yeah.
because I remember laughing about it because I'm like, you guys create your own network and then you blackball. And especially back then too, the Cubs are still rather competitive too, and it's like you're blackballing your whole fan base. So I mean, I feel it now. I mean, I don't expect a YouTube TV deal. I mean, it's just going to give me a reason to pause my subscription as soon as, um, you know, base football's done. Once the Super Bowl concludes, so who gives a shit? Because not like I would watch the Sox anyway. I've been said it 100 times on this podcast that I have no interest in spending any amount of time either being in that stadium, supporting them as long as Jerry Reinsdorf is the owner.
You know what? We'll give you your soapbox moment one of the next couple podcasts, and you can go into detail with how much you loathe the White Sox. I'll say this before we move on: they're going to be
Yeah.
better next year. They can't be as bad as they were this year again. They're gonna win more games next year.
Yeah, and we're gonna laugh about it because watch their free agent signings be like, I always used to laugh about it, and the saying used to be Kenny always gets his guy. I'm referring to Kenny Williams. Kenny always gets his guy. Referring to Manny Ramirez past his prime. Ken Griffey Jr. actually played pretty well for us. James Shields. I'm just
Ooh.
Kenny always gets his guy, and like Yasmani Grandal. It's funny about him because we were linked to him for like 10 years probably. That was a guy that the Sox were always trying to, go grab, go get him, and we got him near the end of his career and he just ended up being shit. It's funny because I wouldn't be shocked if we end up seeing more of that. And we have two new GM, like, well, not two new GMs, but we went from Rick Hahn to Chris Getz, and it's a joke. There's nothing there. But yeah, like you said, we'll move on for time purposes. Let's jump into football. More importantly, I'll pass it along to you to give us that little rundown.
Okay, so this is the Week 6 recap. Got to clear the throat here. All right, so as we do, we start with the Thursday night game. That was San Fran and Seattle, so I'm on the clock. Here we go. Purdy is oh so Purdy. Throws 3 touchdowns as San Fran takes it on the road, 36-24. Caleb shines with 4 touchdown performance to rout Jags, 35-16. Found out Caleb loves a nice tight end. Hint, hint to Cole Kmet. 2 touchdown day. This is a good one. O.M. Godwin. Bucks say, who's your daddy? 51-27 over the Saints. Here's a good one. King Henry commands Commanders to bow down in 30-23. Jaden looks good again. Man, he's good. Here we go. Love and Company proved too much for video game Kyler. 34-14. This is my favorite one. AARP Joe Flacco, wins again on bingo and beef stew night. 2017.
Oh, well done.
Houston barbecues Pats by 20. 41-21. Jalen Hurts Browns. Deshaun Ponder's career change to masseuse.
Oh, not good.
Chargers go cold in 4th. Hang on to win. 23-16 over the Broncos. Steelers take care of Raiders. 32-13. Everyone pitches in as Falcons take care of Panthers. 38-20. Lions were hungry for Cowboys. 47-9. And Bengals outlast Giants 17-7 in an ugly game. And then, of course, tonight we have the Bills taking on your Jets, 7:15. Be there or be square.
Well done. Round of applause for that. Those are really good. I enjoyed that. Real quick before we recap the week 6, obviously jumping in, I kind of discussed it on Friday with Rich on the show too, but tonight I said this to him too, and I want to get your feedback on it. Would you say that this is a must-win for the Jets? Coming off firing your head coach, you bring in kind of another defensive-minded. You take away Nathaniel Hackett's play calling duties, which is great. Now he's going to be up in the box, serving drinks and catering to maybe the owners. I don't know what else he's doing. I don't know why he's still employed, but that's besides the point. But go on, I'll pass it along.
I would almost say I got to look at the records for both teams, but I'd say it's almost a must-win because I think Buffalo, I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, they got spanked. I would say it's probably a must-win for maybe both teams. Now, the Jets obviously are more interesting because you just let go of Robert Saleh, and I'll throw that back to you in a sec to get your thoughts on that. I was surprised when they let him go after a couple weeks this season, but yeah, I mean, it definitely, you're making some changes a few weeks into the season, month and a half. Yeah, the offense has got to get going a little bit more. But as far as a must-win, it's tough. For me, it's almost both teams, and someone's got to lose. So someone's going to be digging themselves a bit of a deeper hole after tonight. But yeah, I think I'd probably agree with you with the Jets a little bit more with some of the changes they made this week. I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, so this is going to be playing for the first place in the division, and I saw a stat right before the podcast too. This would be if they win tonight, this will be the first time in like 14 years that the Jets have actually led in the division,
Hmm.
which is crazy to think about that you haven't come close to even being in first place, let alone that. But this is kind of where, tonight's the statement game because it's a division game. You're at home. You need to win at home. You know that more than anybody. You win your games at home. And, this is they came out and said they're going to run the ball more. Good. Get Brees involved. Like I said, you got Braylon Allen for a reason. Put him in. Let him bang out some, goal line carries. Like, I don't care who it is, run the ball. It's going to open up the passing game. Also, if they win tonight, there's a chance they get Devontae Adams as soon as tomorrow. We'll see what ends up happening. I know there's a lot of speculation that he might end up staying. I don't think he wants to stay in Oakland or Vegas now, wherever they're at. They don't win games. They're not good. They don't have a quarterback. Basically, Max Crosby's also fed up. He pushed a coach yesterday. How much more can we put, these guys through? Trade Adams to the Jets. That's where he wants to go. He wants to reunite with Rodgers. He wants to be on a team that, has playoff aspirations. Let's see it happen. So it's going to come down to that. The Bills are not going to be a team to, you know, look past for sure because Josh Allen is that dynamic as a QB. But, you know, we're at the point where the Jets, they should win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. That's what they should because the Bills don't have anybody to throw to.
Yeah, and just on a side note in this game, I have a chance to win in my one fantasy league this week. 4-1 I had started. I had three, I think I had 2 or 3 wins the entire last year. So it's been quite the turnaround. And I'm looking to scale it back a little bit, but I'm playing my buddy Dan. So it's Dan versus Dan, a little double D action this week.
Dan
And
squared.
Dan squared. And I think I'm up by a point. It might even be 9/10 of a point. I've got Keon Coleman. He's got Garrett Wilson. So I'll be honest, I'm a little worried about tonight. But you did say that the Jets are thinking maybe they want to run the ball. So if that's from your mouth to God's ears, if we can run the ball today, Brees, Braylon, maybe anybody else wants to run the ball, that's great. Let's just not throw the ball to your number one option that much today. And maybe let's get Keon in the end zone once or twice. How about we do that? The Jets can still win the game. I'm cool with that. But yeah, I'm really sweating this one out tonight.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I need a couple things in a couple of my leagues too. I need pretty much Rodgers to go off tonight and just to kind of seal a deal for one of the leagues. And also just like I look around, I don't know if you do this too when you play fantasy, but I look at everyone else's matchups and see where I could like jump up, where I can go down when it comes to those standings. And it's one of those weeks where I'm watching the standings pretty diligently just to see where we can land. But yeah, like I said, hopefully we look a lot better tonight. And if not, it's gonna be a very sad, soggy sorrows next podcast for sure. But all right, let's jump back in to week 6. San Francisco, that was a lot closer game than I expected it to be. I know Jordan Mason got hurt in the I think second quarter. He was having a huge game too. You know, it shows how good San Francisco is to endure all these injuries and still be as good as they are. I think they are flawed, but Geno Smith 312 passing yards, and you can't complain about that.
No, Seattle is actually a good team. I think they were better than people thought they were going to be last year, and they're decent again too. Both of these teams are 3-3. You'd think San Francisco would probably be 4-2 or 5-1, and San Fran. I mean, Purdy does what he needs to do, right? He throws a couple touchdowns. That defense, the defense for San Fran. I don't know. I mean, maybe Seattle is that good this year, and they're going to be in the playoffs. But I feel like, and maybe I haven't seen San Fran play enough this year, but I feel like maybe the defense isn't as dominant as we've seen, or maybe it was just this week. But that was, I would agree, that was a game that you could have seen San Fran really blow out Seattle, and that obviously didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. And I think CMC is supposed to come back as soon as next week, potentially. At least he might start practicing this week. So we'll see. If not, it's going to be Uh, Gruendo is the running back.
Yeah.
If Mason can't go, he was the guy who had that huge combine, like blew it out of the water with his 40 time. But moving on, Jacksonville in London with Chicago. Our boy Caleb here, man, finally showed out. Finally, you saw what I saw, back at USC. What I've been saying for as long as I've been pushing the Caleb issue we were discussing, Caleb versus Justin. This is what Caleb is made to do. You know, be dynamic on, in the pocket if he needs to, get outside and make plays happen. And that's what he was doing. As you mentioned, Cole Kmet, he found Cole Kmet twice for 2 TDs. I'm pretty sure he had 4 touchdown passes, almost 5. One of them got called back and got because they DJ Moore ended up on the one. But just it shows how good Caleb is, and also this is a huge uh, statement to the defense as well because I don't think they've allowed more than 21 points in any of their games so far.
That's interesting. You might be right on that. Yeah, you know what? The Bears, there's
Yeah.
good things to look at. I mean, uh, if you look at the Bears' schedule, because I think we have a bye week this week,
Yes.
the next 2 or 3 games after the bye are the most winnable, and Washington is there, and we know how good they've been. You've got
That's 3.
Arizona, and then I forget who the other team was.
Washington. So it's going to be Jaden Daniels versus Caleb on at
Well, yeah,
noon.
Washington. There was Arizona, and then there's New England. I think we played too. Other than
Yeah,
that, though, like
that's 3 games.
the last 7 or 8 weeks of the season, we played Detroit twice, Green Bay twice, Minnesota twice. I think San Fran
San
and
Fran.
Seattle are both in there. I was just looking at the schedule last night, so I was talking to my buddy. I'm thinking, and I'm going to ask you this question too.
Yes.
We're 4-2. The
Hmm.
next 3 weeks after the bye are probably the most winnable games we have. I don't think we're going to go 7-2, but even if we do, which one of those last 8 games are we going to be able to win? I don't think we beat San Fran. I think that game might be in San Fran as well. Seattle is a pretty good team this year. And
Yeah.
then Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay all twice.
If you were to ask me that question, probably prior to Aiden Hutchinson getting hurt,
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I'd say I'm not sure. I think you have a chance against you split against Detroit, and you have to split against Green Bay, and I think Green Bay is your first real test this coming up because Washington, yes, Jaden Daniels is the real deal. He's up there with the rookie of the year. I think we mentioned it a couple weeks ago as well. Um, Arizona is kind of just showing that, they are kind of a one trick pony, and Kyler Murray is just, he's good, but, that defense needs a lot of work. And we kind of knew that, after picking in the top 5. New England, winnable game. So you're talking, in theory, if you lose to Washington, okay, you beat Arizona and you beat New England, your biggest test is Green Bay. And that's going to be Jordan Love looks good. He
Yeah.
came back from that injury and he's looking
He's
good.
unreal.
And at that point, then we're talking into the fundamentals here. You got to be able to establish the run, which they've been doing with DeAndre Swift. That's why they're being so successful, is they're utilizing their run game, which is opening up the pass. Not hard. I mean, I would have to say maybe Minnesota. Something's going to happen where they lose a game too, but I could see very easily if you lose to Detroit and you lose to San Francisco, you need to win those Minnesota games.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, do we believe in Darnold and Minnesota going on for the rest of the season? I mean, you know what? They've been very good. Can you see the Bears maybe taking a game from them? I could see it
I could see it.
if Darnold has an off week or the defense over there just if Caleb lights him up. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean with the way Minnesota's looked, and you mentioned it, I don't know if we beat Green Bay, man. Jordan Love is playing. I mean, he got hurt, and I thought he was going to miss a month or two, and he missed like 2 weeks, if that. I mean, the guy's come back. He's like freaking
right.
Superman.
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of those underrated QBs for sure. Yeah, I mean, you got to win against Minnesota. You got to pull one from Green Bay, and then you got to hope that you can. I mean, they almost beat Detroit last year, I think twice. So it comes down to it. I mean, it's very winnable games. I think that Detroit game is on Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. I would have to say you got to take one from Green Bay. You have to make that statement. And if you want to win over your fan base, you beat Green Bay, and that's where you get. I mean, that's where it is.
Yeah, couldn't agree
And you
more.
do it at home too. Do it at home in
Oh,
front of your fans. Like if you could go out and if that defense stays stout like they are, and you control the game, there's no reason that. But that's going to be the biggest test, and that's going to come down to coaching. And we're going to see it whether over these next 3 games. You got the bye week. You get some guys back, hopefully. The whole secondary got banged up in that game, and then Brisker was already out. So yeah, we'll see. You got to beat Washington though. If you lose to Washington, you're going to be kind of sitting here like, hey, we're going to be good, but we might not make the playoffs. But the NFC North is a beast. You know,
it is. And that real quick, that game against the Commanders, is that in Washington or is that in Chicago?
that's in Washington.
Oh
Yeah, the
boy.
next two are away games, and then luckily Arizona's in a dome, so you're at least inside with that too.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at though. Those next 3 games after the bye, we've got to find a way to take at least 2 of those, go 6-3, 7-2, and then like you said, we got to find a way to rattle off a couple. If we do
Yep.
that though, we're in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason you can't be. Moving into the Green Bay versus Arizona game, obviously, like we said, Green Bay just put a beat down on Arizona. I did think it was funny that Kyler Murray signed a deal with like gaming or whatever now, like as of last week, and then he gets blown out. I mean, it's just Marvin Harrison Jr. got hurt, but you
Yeah,
can't win with 2 people. Jordan Love just has so many weapons at his disposal, whether it's Wicks, whether it's Romeo Dobbs, whether it's Christian Watson,
that
Tucker.
that
I think
Reed
it's Tucker Craft.
that Reed kid is good too, Jaden
That
Reed or
too.
whatever. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's
he was,
unreal.
and he was underrated coming out of Michigan State. The only reason he didn't have a huge senior year at Michigan State was because his quarterback transferred out. But Green Bay, once again, they
Yeah,
just know how to win.
yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Indianapolis at Tennessee. Uh, what an ugly game too. I watched it and it was funny because I had Red Zone on and it was just back and forth between that game and then Tampa Bay at New Orleans too. And it was just so boring to watch because of the score. They just didn't light it up. JT wasn't out there, but you did have Flacco, and that guy just knows how to win a ball game apparently. Will Levis, we knew he wasn't going to be very good for Tennessee, kind of showing it right there. Pollard was a bright spot, but yeah, Tennessee going to be picking in the top 10 again. No questions asked. Indianapolis is holding on by a thread, and I think they're
Yeah.
afraid to start Anthony Richardson because they know they can't win with him.
And that's interesting too because Richardson looked good last year before he got hurt. He took too many hits, injured the shoulder, and then he was out. I mean, I don't know if it's the inaccuracies. I've seen him overthrow some guys. I'm sure there's probably been drops too, but that's interesting to me because he looked pretty good last year. I thought.
He did. He looked, especially for fantasy, he was putting up massive numbers. The problem is that there's more to the game, and he turns the ball over way too much.
Yeah,
He doesn't feed his receivers at all. So we'll see. That defense is decent. They did beat the Bears, so
yeah.
uh, that was a bad game. That was just a bad
It
game overall. But
it really was.
um, yeah, Indianapolis. We'll see what they end up doing coming up. But Houston at New England. Houston. Oh well, let's talk on New England here. Drake May made his first start on a
Yep.
very, very, very bad New England team. And it should be noted that he threw for 3 touchdowns. He had 3 turnovers in part, but he threw for 243 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a great rookie experience right there on the
Yeah.
team he's on. Yeah, obviously he's going to have to do a little bit more, but with coaching and learning it, him being out there is great, and he looked good. So good for him. North Carolina product, so can't go wrong there. But flipping it on the other side, first game without Nico Collins and Tank Dell stepped up. Stephon Diggs. Everyone was so worried about Stephon Diggs coming in there, being a bust, and he looks good too. And then Joe Mixon came back, and the games that Joe Mixon's been out there, he's been an animal, and that just shows how good Joe Mixon is too. We saw it many years with the Bengals, where I think that's one thing that's wrong with the Bengals, and we'll touch on them a little bit later. Is the running game's not there, and Joe Mixon just shows he's still got it. He just got hurt in that Bear game.
I'm glad you mentioned Drake May because just on the outside, the scope, going back to the draft, all three of those top quarterbacks have looked good so far. Caleb, Jaden, and now May, like you said, making his debut yesterday. Obviously, I didn't really get to see a ton of him play. I saw a couple highlights, but yeah, I mean, you know what? Justin Fields, for reference, threw for 145 yards, no touchdowns, no picks yesterday. Drake May, with much less to work with on offense, threw for, I think you said, three touchdowns and 240, 50 yards. So
Yeah.
uh, he he's an interesting one. He looked good. I tried to get him in one of my leagues, but wasn't able to move up enough. But uh, yeah, I mean, as far as who he's throwing the ball to, other than I mean,
You got
that
Jalen Polk. I mean, Baker's not out there yet. He's one of the guys I was high on. If he ever gets a chance, which he might with Drake May, but he brought back Keyshawn Butte. If you remember him from LSU, he was really not really highly touted prospect. He tested terribly during the combine, but he made him look good. So we'll see if he builds the chemistry with that, and that's the new guy there. It's gonna be fun to see how he progresses throughout the rest of the season, even though I hate New England. But I'll see him a couple times.
one quick thing on Houston before we
Yeah,
move off them. I was just offered a first round pick for Tank Dell in a dynasty league.
yeah. Who are your other wide receivers?
Well, I need some more wide receiver help, but I'm also playing the long game. I don't expect to make the playoffs this year, even though I'm 4-1. If I win tonight, I'm 5-1. But Jameson Williams, Tank Dell, Malik Neighbors is my number one now. Those are like my top couple guys. Wandale Robinson has been pretty good
Yeah,
this year. So those are.
I'm.
I mean, I need more receivers, but it's a first round pick for like the number 3 receiver.
But are you in this aspect? Are you just kicking the can down the road essentially because you're basically replacing a wide receiver that you know is going to get the volume with another wide receiver?
Yeah, yeah. I'm hoping to get another. Malik Neighbors type receiver. I'm going to have a top
I mean, if you get
pick.
Tet McMillan, Tet McMillan out of Arizona is pretty good. So if you're aiming for him in the dynasty draft, I mean, if you get that's the thing though is like if your team's bad enough to get a low pick like that, then by all means that
Yeah.
works out well for you. But it's one of those things where you gotta really evaluate. Then if you're just kicking the can down the road, it's not really worth it. You're not if you're going to be good, like bad enough to get the number one overall pick or number two overall pick, then sure.
Okay. Noted.
That would be my opinion on that one. All right, Tampa Bay at New Orleans. That was a very back and forth game. Spencer Rattler made his first start,
Hmm.
and honestly, going up until I want to say the fourth quarter, it was really close. I think it was like 27-27. And then all of a sudden, Tampa Bay just lit it up.
Yeah.
Uh, Bucky Irving had a huge game. Happy to see that because you and I made a trade with him just recently, so I was happy that he panned out this week, just to show that he is a quality player. Sean Tucker came out of nowhere. He came out of Syracuse 2 years ago and kind of was just log jammed, and I think he got hurt. He had a huge game, but I mean, we can't say enough about how good Baker Mayfield's been too, and Chris Godwin. All of a sudden, he's throwing to Chris Godwin. Last year, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with him. All he did was feed Mike Evans, and now all of a sudden, it's Chris Godwin, which I love to see because I have a couple of stock in him too. Um, I think the only bright spot for New Orleans is the fact that they still have Alvin Kamara. Olave got hurt. Rashid Shaheed is kind of just a deep ball threat. But no Derek Carr. He's hurt. You got Spencer Rattler in there. You were able to score 27 points. That's not bad, but got to be better up for New Orleans. But Tampa Bay might be the real deal.
The Tampa Bay, I think, is the real deal. They have a solid defense. Their head coach, I think, Todd Bowles has been
Yep.
really good the last couple of years, and yeah,
Former Jet.
Baker's revived his career over there, and looks like he's a legit top 5 or so quarterback right now in the league. I mean, he looks great. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's a legit team. I would not want to play that team come playoff time.
No. And, yeah. If Baker keeps doing what he's doing, yeah, they're going to score a lot of points this year. Moving on, Cleveland at Philadelphia. The biggest surprise there was not even on the field; it was on the sidelines with Nick Sirianni. Did you see that clip of him screaming at the fans?
No, I did not.
Yeah, that guy is so unstable. It's just unreal. So first off, he shaved his head before the game, like not before the game, but he got a haircut and he just shaved his head, and it's giving Britney Spears vibes. Britney Spears
Oh
2008 vibes,
no.
shaving her head. It's very much like that, in my opinion, if you're going to correlate it. And he's on the sidelines and he's yelling at the fans, and they were winning. Don't know why. And like they brought up to like so he went under his press conference, and I don't know if he did this on purpose, but he had his kids sitting at the press conference on the podium with him. So I don't know if it was to avoid the harder questions, but they did ask him like, "Hey, what were you yelling at the fans and stuff?" And he's like, "Well, we don't like when you boo us," and rah, 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 rah. I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like he's just unstable up there.
It's Brittany, bitch.
Pretty much. It's Sirianni, bitch. Yeah. Eagles did win, barely against a bad Cleveland team. Deshaun
Yeah.
Watson is so bad. They pretty much are just. I think they're just trying to embarrass him at this point, which is good. Just embarrass the hell out of him. How bad of a quarterback he is. Um, it's just ugly. I think I saw like he hasn't completed like they're 0 for 26 on their last third 26 third downs with him at the QB.
Before we move on from that one, what happened to him? I know he missed 2 years. I know that, but he was a really good quarterback a couple years ago before he missed the couple years. I mean,
Uh,
unless my memory serves me wrong, I mean he was good, and now he's like worse than AARP Flacco.
Yeah, I mean, he tore his ACL when he was in Houston, and then I think he sat out the year. I think he just told them like, "Hey, I'm not going to play for you." And then all the allegations came out, all those SA cases, which isn't good. And so he lost the credibility. I think everyone just doesn't like him. So I think that's just a lot of it. But yeah, you've never seen a fall off come off like that. Like you said with Houston, he was actually pretty good.
It just like obviously I don't want to see him play well with everything that's
No,
come out with him, but yeah, I mean that's you want to talk about a fall off. I mean,
so bad.
yeah.
Next up, Washington at Baltimore. That was a fun game to watch. Lamar Jackson took over, threw for 323 yards. Derrick Henry, the touchdown machine, rushed for 132. Then you had Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels looked good too. Again, like I said earlier, he's going to be a front runner for Rookie of the Year. I think Caleb kind of pushed the issue back in his favor, just with the most recent performance. I think it should be noted, though, that you're going to have to see him play against good teams to really prove it. The Commanders lost to Tampa Bay and they lost to Baltimore, but they beat some, okay teams, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that if Caleb keeps playing, I mean, for me, I'd almost say, I mean, I think it's pretty close. Like you said, Caleb, especially the last week or two, has looked really good. Jaden's looked pretty good every week, though. So for
Yeah.
me, I mean, I'd still maybe say Jaden's the slight front runner, but it is close. They both have looked good, and you can't say enough about King Henry. He goes
Yeah.
over to Baltimore. I don't know what people thought when he was going over there. I know a lot of people think, well, Lamar runs the ball a lot. Well, it's has only helped Lamar with being
Yep.
able to hand off the rock to a guy 15, 20 times a game. All he does is rush for 130 yards and one or two scores. So, I mean, that dude. I was also just talking about the best running backs I've seen in my day. I think on the short list, you've got King Henry, LT, and Adrian Peterson. And I don't know if I'm forgetting anyone, but
Um, no, that's a great company to be in. And do you know what's funny too is Derrick Henry, when he first started, his first 3 seasons were not good.
no.
I don't know what clicked with him, but something clicked, and he looked like the Alabama Derrick Henry, running people over and just tractor Cito, man.
You can't bring him down. He's one of those like he's a throwback to me. He's
Yeah,
not one of your smaller like HN who's going to run past you. He's a big bulldozer who he had I don't know how many times in this past game he throws a stiff arm out there. That is a man's man of a stiff arm. Okay, you're not bringing him down. You need two or three guys to take him down, or you need him to run so far to the end, to the out of bounds line where you can just hope to push him out of bounds.
yeah, and good luck with that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I think they finally figured it out too with in Baltimore. I know they start off real slow, but
yeah, they look good.
Lamar's picking them apart through the air, and then obviously if they need to, they're relying on Derrick Henry down the middle. So Good for them. Los Angeles at Denver. Did you see the clip that like Jim Harbaugh ended up in the blue tent before the game? Like
I saw something about that. I forget what they said.
I think it was like an irregular heartbeat or something. Something weird happened, but he ended up coming back because he's a football guy. Obviously, finished out the game. Hopefully everything's okay with him. But yeah, super weird. Uh, one thing I'll say, obviously the Chargers won, and I think they have the best chance with that system to be a team to beat the Chiefs. The problem is I feel like they don't have the wide receivers for Justin Herbert's skill set. And I don't know if they'll start opening up the playbook a little bit more, but it's very run heavy. And it's great to see J.K. Dobbins come back after the amount of injuries he's had. But it's it's at what cost? I mean, you're taking Justin Herbert out of the game, who's a prolific QB. I mean, last season you could go back and look at some of the games that he had, and he was throwing for 400 yards a game. It's crazy that you're limiting how much he's throwing. And I don't know if it's because he doesn't have the wide receivers to throw to. Um, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on that?
It's been a tale of 2 years for Herbert, with as far as like fantasy production and also just pure volume. Yeah, he's not throwing the ball a ton. Um, he also too. I mean, obviously they drafted that Joe Alt, who is one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen.
Yeah.
They need another Joe Alt or two. They need to protect Herbert because I know last year
Slater's
he.
pretty good. He's on the other side.
I'm
The two
just
best tackles in the league.
Well, I'm just saying because Herbert, I know, is already, I think, a little banged up this year. He was
Yeah.
banged up most of last year. You got to
Yeah.
protect this kid. He's a big guy who can take a hit, but at some point or another, you can't take that many hits. And
Right.
he's he's my favorite quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
I love watching him play. He can sling it like no other. Um, like I said, he's big. He can run. There's nothing on the field he can't do. He's so much fun to watch. And yes, I think that is a bit of an issue with who he's going to throw the ball to. Well, Quentin Johnston, this is the year for him to step up. I think this is
Yeah.
maybe just a second year, but he needs to step up and become a guy. And I like McConkey. He could be some sort of like obviously smaller guy. Reminds me of someone who could be like an Edelman or like a Wes Welker type guy.
Guy
Get
with
in
good
there.
footwork. Yeah.
I mean, you've got those two. I forget who he has as a tight end to throw the ball to.
Will
Um,
Disley.
yeah, but um, yeah, he doesn't have a ton of weapons, but someone like him can fit the ball wherever it needs to go. So hopefully those two can become something for them. And honestly, like you said, they should have beat the Chiefs early in the year. I think they lost that game. I think it was 17-10, if my memory serves me correct.
Yep.
And they scored all their points on the first two drives of the game. You can't score all your points on the first two drives and then go 45 minutes or whatever without scoring. You can't do that.
Right. Yep. Moving on to Pittsburgh at Vegas. Like I said, Vegas is a dumpster fire. The main note I would have to say is Najee Harris, 106 yards. He
Yeah.
finally got in the end zone this year. I have him in one fantasy league, so that was nice to see. But you know, their offensive line is putrid. That's the best thing I could say about it. Where if you had Russell Wilson in that situation, he'd be dead. Like there's Justin Fields makes up for a lot of the issues that they have with the offensive line being so mobile. And I think he'll hold on to the starting job the rest of the year, bearing he gets hurt. And he had the two rushing touchdowns himself. So, if he couldn't do it through the air, he was able to at least do it via his feet. But I mean, it's very Bears esque. It's a lot of the same things, but like a better coach. So we'll end up seeing what ends up happening with him.
I honestly hope and I'm a Russell Wilson fan. Obviously, the last couple of years he's been, like this, but
Yeah.
I see no reason to start Russell. Fields has played well. He's earned the starting job, in my opinion, and probably everyone's opinion. And I know his last couple of weeks he hasn't done a ton through the air, but you said it best. I mean, he's so fast and mobile. He can make stuff happen with his legs, and we saw that for a couple of years in Chicago. So good for him.
Yep. Next one, Detroit at Dallas. Detroit went in there and absolutely slaughtered the Cowboys. Cowboys sit at 3-3, and they lost at home 47-9. That's embarrassing. couldn't get it going through the air. They have zero run game. Bringing back Zeke wasn't the answer. Rico Dowdle is not very good. So can't do that. And then obviously you can only throw it so many times. But you signed Dak Prescott long term. You signed CD Lamb again. Those two really aren't the problem. I think it's just the whole team is the problem. But they have 11 turnovers, the second worst in the NFL. So speaking volumes of how bad they are, but also shows how good Detroit is. Forced a lot of turnovers in that game. But St. Brown, Goff, Montgomery, Laporta, they all look good. That's the thing, is that's what's making Jared Goff look like that elite QB.
Dallas is one of those teams that can look like a Super Bowl contender one week, and then the next week they get blown out, and you think, oh, this team's not even making the playoffs. And
Right.
then, yeah, for Detroit, yeah, what else can you say? I mean, they that offense is going to roll all year. They're great.
Yep. Next game, real quickly run through this because there's really not much to mention outside of Bijan Robinson finally getting it together. Is Atlanta at Carolina. At this point, Carolina should just play Bryce Young, just because, like, why are you trotting out Dalton out there? You're like 1-4, 1-5. You're not going to win many ball games. Just play for that low pick again. Hopefully, be able to protect Bryce Young or what. I don't even know what direction they go.
Yeah.
I guess see what you have in Bryce still and try to hope you build upon it. Leggett got a touchdown, so that was cool to see. But Bijan finally had his 2-touchdown game. I think it was at halftime. We've been kind of waiting. Bijan owners have been waiting on that forever.
Yeah.
So that was good to see. And you're kind of seeing Kirk and Drake London build some good chemistry out there, too. I think London would have had 2 touchdowns, but he dropped one in the end zone.
Yeah, he had a touchdown. Algier had a really good game on the ground as
Yep.
well. Bijan had a couple. Everyone kind of got involved, and that's the offense you expect to see with Atlanta. I mean, you had the hype bringing Kirk over, all the other guys, Pitts, London, Mooney, Bijan, Algier. They got a lot of guys over there. So,
Yep. Last game is Cincinnati at New York. Very boring game, as you mentioned in the
yeah.
preview. The biggest play was Joe Burrow rushing for like a 50-something yard touchdown. And I've never seen him run, but I was nervous being a Joe Burrow owner just about every almost fantasy league that I'm in. I was like, oh no. Um, that offensive line's also shit too. But shows how, good of a quarterback he is. He also took a huge hit, which scared me again. But he had that big touchdown. I think Chase Brown finished it off with like a short touchdown, put him up 17-7. Daniel Jones still sucks. Malik Neighbors was out, but I thought it was funny. He was at like a Travis Scott concert, like in New York earlier in
Oh,
the week. So
Jesus.
not good for somebody with a concussion, but I guess we'll see. Yeah, Giants still don't look good, which we weren't surprised.
No, obviously, this was a game since he had to win. If they had any hopes of maybe trying to turn it around and make the playoffs, I think they're still 2-4, even winning that game yesterday. But yeah, we'll see if since he can turn it around.
Yep. All right. Let's jump into the MLB playoffs. So obviously, we kind of both picked some upsets in that opening wild card round. I had the Tigers, you had the Royals. Glad those hit for us. Then both lost to the Guardians and Yankees, teams that had the bye. Padres, I thought were going to take down the Dodgers.
Yeah,
The way they started off that series was so exciting, and they have a lot of problems. I heard like their locker room had a lot of issues after that game 5 loss. They were shut out in the last 2 games. Hit the damn ball. Um, you know, Not good there. And then Mets beat the Phillies. Shocker. The Mets. I don't know if it's the grimace curse or whatever's going on, but
yeah,
the Mets are rolling. They got through. So now we have Mets Dodgers. They finished game 1 last night. Dodgers won very very easily, and then Guardians Yankees kick off this afternoon.
yeah. A lot of good ones. I think I had picked Cleveland and the Yankees to move on. They moved
Yep.
on, and then I picked the Phillies and San Diego to play each other. So that tells you what I know. But yeah, you know what? We're set to have some good series. Was a little surprised when Cleveland kind of woke up against Detroit, and then Game 5 they take it to Skubal in that one inning. Lane
Yeah.
Thomas hits the granny, and um, that proved to be it. So good for Cleveland. they're probably the better overall team over Detroit. So should be a better series, hopefully. But that was good to see. And then the Yankees, I mean, they were too much for Kansas City. Kansas City is a young team; they need more offensively.
Yeah.
Um, and the Yanks looked they had one game where they scored 5 or 6 runs, but the offense did not score a ton against a good pitching staff with Kansas City. So I'm interested to see how the Yankees do. Now the Yankees bullpen, I don't know if I saw this correctly. I don't know if they gave up a run in that Kansas City series. They were like freaking lights out.
Yeah, Clay Holmes, who's kind of blew up during the season, lost his closer role, ended up looking good.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest surprises for me too, is seeing the Yankees kind of turn it around in their bullpen, and then Stanton looks like he's just coming up clutch for them too. So that's been huge. Um, Tough series though. Tough series. It's very boring, and I have a fear that it's going to end up being Dodgers Yankees, and it's just going to be one of those where it's a big market World Series, and I'm just going to be so boring. And I think the Dodgers actually kill the Yankees in that aspect.
Hmm.
I think if the Dodgers somehow lose to the Mets, I think we see the Yankees win the World Series.
Well, my worry, I mean, I know it's only one game with the Mets, but my worry was, the Dodgers, for them to get to the World Series, it doesn't seem like it's that difficult because you're playing a Mets team that, in my opinion, shouldn't even be here. Their first 55 games of the season, the Mets were 22 and 33. You had 100
Right.
games left. They turned it around. They were ended up being like the hottest team in baseball the last 90 or 100 games. So good for them. They had a great run. They're somewhat reminiscent of the Nationals a few years ago when Washington got hot at the end of the year with Scherzer and they had
Yeah.
Strasburg and they ended up going all the way and they were the hot team and won it all. But um, and my thing with the Dodgers was I didn't think they had the starting pitching. I still don't. They're starting Brazier. Last name, I forget his first name. They're starting him game two because Yamamoto pitched a couple days ago and Flaherty has had a really nice year.
He
So
pitched
good.
yesterday.
Yeah. So, I mean, outside of those two, though, I mean, if Walker Bueller's going to pitch in the playoffs, he missed the whole year, so you can't expect him to do well. Kershaw's not even on the roster. Uh, we've talked about all the other guys who are out, like Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin. The list goes on and on. Now, here's one question I have for you, or two. One, why did Mark Pryor ever get the pitching coach job for the Dodgers or any major league club? And two, should he be canned finally because all their guys are freaking hurt again?
Yeah, it's very Mark Pryor esque with the amount of injuries that they've had. I don't know how much he actually has to say on it, but yeah, you know what? That's always been a surprise. I think a couple of years he's been their pitching coach for a couple of years now. And
Yeah,
I remember the first time I was listening to a broadcast and they're like Mark Pryor. I'm like, wait, Mark Pryor, like the Mark Pryor from the
yeah,
Cubs? I was
yeah.
like, he's still kicking around somewhere. Um, no, I mean, I think if they don't make the World Series or win the World Series, I bet you they make a change. And if not, strength and conditioning, goddamn, what the hell is going on there with all the injuries? But it just shows how good of pitching depth the Dodgers do have, that they're able to win these games. And, you had a guy like Kodai Senga who came back, looked good in the game against the Phillies, and then just got blown up against the Dodgers. And it was a pretty quick yank for him just because of how bad he was pitching. But, I guess we'll just have to see where they go from here. Like the Dodgers are just one of those teams that just seems to always kind of be there. Um, looking at their depth chart, I'm pulling it up now. You got Yamamoto, Flaherty. Bueller's kind of the guy that they have to go to. And I think the guy Brazier you mentioned, he's a bullpen guy. So that means that they're
Yeah.
just, and I think it delays the game now because we don't have these starting pitchers and they're only going 3 innings, but you're using openers and you're using your best reliever early in the game and putting them against their best players. So uh one note too is Michael Kopech, he's been lights out for the Dodgers. Good for him.
He's always had the stuff.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys where you see him, you're like, how is his ERA? 3, 4, whatever it is. You look at him, you're like, this guy should have like a 1.5 ERA. He's got great stuff, and yeah, sometimes you just need a change of scenery or a different environment or whatever, and you start to thrive. So if he does, good for him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm rooting for him. I have no problems or qualms with him. He's able to save close games, and I think they might go to him earlier unless they want to use him for that late game like heroics. But looking at is it might be a bullpen game today, and then
It
Yamamoto.
probably is. It probably is, and that's that's kind of what the Dodgers they've been kind of analytical. They'll do that. That's what's going to save them is they've got a solid bullpen, and
Yeah,
obviously you've got to go through murderers row with Otani, Betts, and Freeman, and then you still have Teoscar who had a really good year, and Will
so
Smith.
good,
I don't think
so
Will
good.
Smith has done anything really this postseason, but he's still a good hitter. So they've got guys who can hit, which unfortunately irks me. But
Yeah,
the
I know
starting pitching, you'd think, especially in a 7 game series, you'd think that's going to catch up to them. And if it doesn't this series, and it ends up going 6 or 7, and then they get to the World Series and that goes 6 or 7, I still have problems saying that they're going to win because all these other teams have multiple starting pitchers who are healthier and probably better than some of the guys that the Dodgers are rolling out there right now. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the Guardians too, we'll touch on the American League after. Let me go back to the Mets. They got Sean Manaea going tonight. If he can shut down the Dodgers lineup, I will say this right now, that's giving them the best chance is because the Mets have such good depth you know, at pitching right now. They have Manaea, they have Severino. Senga got lit up, but you have Quintana. I mean, Quintana's the girl next door, man. I'm telling you, you're getting 6 innings out of him.
Also too with the Mets, just to bring this up, I've nicknamed them the comeback kids because
Yeah,
they've come back like I don't know, they said like 50 something times this year late in the game to win. So that's like the one team right now you just can't count out. I know they lost like
yeah.
9-0 yesterday, but they have that they've got something. Like you said, they need to their manager Espinoza the last month or so of the season was trying to stretch the starting pitchers out to get ready for the playoffs. So we'll see if that helps them. Manaya had a really nice year. Q, like you just said, the girl next door, you look over and you're like, damn, she still looks good. And
I'm
then,
telling you.
I mean, the Mets have something. Lindor had a nice year. The polar bear, we'll see if he's still a Met after this year. I would assume they have to keep him because he had a good year. They got far in the playoffs. Starling Marte is adding some hits in there. They've got some guys. Uh, but yeah, this is a must win. You can't go down 2-0.
Nope. Like you said, can't go down 2-0. Manaya on the bump tonight. Good luck for him. Yeah, I think we're both rooting for the Mets. Obviously, no one's rooting
Yeah.
for the Dodgers. I like Otani, but I like Betts.
Yeah.
I like all the players. That's what sucks. It's just how they go about it. They have the money to spend it. I'm jealous. That's essentially what every baseball team is.
Yeah.
Um, we'll see. Ventos or whoever the third baseman is for the Mets. I think his name's
Vientos.
Vientos. Thank you, Mark. Uh, he's been hot too. Get going. Him, Lindor, Nemo. Show you want it. That's all I have to say. Jumping into the Yankees Guardians series, I think it's really interesting too, just because the Guardians once again are like that slimy team with their pitching. Tanner Bybee looked really good in that last game too. Matthew Boyd has kind of had a hot second half. As soon as he got off the IL, he looked good. Alex Cobb, I think he made 2 starts. So you have some guys, that could really pitch, and then their bullpen has been awesome this entire series. So we'll see what the Yankees can do against them.
I just wish Cleveland had Bieber. 'Cause if they had Bieber going, that would
Anybody.
be,
That's
yeah.
the thing with the Guardians too is they just but they produce like Ben Lively looked good too this entire year.
You know what? They've got guys. It seems like they've always got the pitching, and that's been their crux the last few years has been the offense. They don't score a lot of runs. They have to win all these close games. The
Yeah.
bullpen's good. The starting pitching is good. Now they've got the offense that's been rolling a little bit this year. So we'll see if those guys can keep going. You've got like you said, Cobb versus Rodon tonight. So
Yep.
Rodon, I think he's only pitched the one game so far, and his ERA is like 8 or 9, so he gave up a couple runs. But
He had that hot inning. He had he looked good in that first inning, was pounding his chest, going nuts, right? Like kind of very White Sox esque when he pitched for them and got lit up like right after he did that. So if he comes out, pitches his balls off, I think the Yankees could win this game, but I mean, Guardians are not a team to, count out. They're kind of grimy, so we'll see.
yeah, I'm excited. I know we've got. I think the Cleveland Yankees game is that the one that is that the first game at 3?
No, the Dodgers Mets is at 3, and
Okay.
then we have Yankees are at 6:38
Okay.
Central.
Well, we got about you said three, so you got about a little less than an hour till the first game, which is always a good thing. I know I'll be putting that on. Go Mets, even though I'm not necessarily a big Mets fan, especially when they swept my Cubs in 2015 to go to the World Series, I think. But
Yep.
hopefully, I can't root for the Dodgers,
No.
especially with Mark Pryor over there. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, I'm also going to the Mets just because the Mets are very much like the White Sox, where they're kind of like the laughing stock, of the second team in the second city, whatever you want to call them. With the Cubs, the Yankees. Obviously, I want the Mets, and obviously, I mean, I don't like the Guardians. Like, I shouldn't like them, but I'd like them over the Yankees. Bunch of Gabagools. It would be cool to see a New York World Series, though.
I was just gonna say, like, that's it's still a possibility to have that Subway Series, which would be would be cool. Um, Even though, like I said, I don't think the Mets were really supposed to be here this year. I mean, they got hot, good for them, but yeah, I mean, it would be cool to have that Subway Series.
Yeah, and I think if we want to touch on teams that shouldn't have been there, I mean, I think the wild card has kind of become a joke because so many teams are getting in at this point. I mean, there's no real reason why the Royals and Detroit Tigers should have been even in the playoffs, in my opinion. I mean, they did work. I mean, they beat the Orioles, they beat the Astros, they beat the teams they were supposed to beat. So hats off to them. But I think that's just my one critique I have to say with the format for the wild card series is just it's sweeps every time almost.
And it's interesting because since they've added these extra wild cards, the wild card teams are at least some of them every year are getting to the second or third round. They're doing better than some of these teams that win the division, get the one or two seed, and then they've got to sit. You'd think having rest would help you. You play that 162. It's a marathon, so you would think having a few days off would help you rest up, and it really hasn't worked out that way a ton.
Up until this year, I'm glad you
Yeah,
brought that up too because for the viewers, the bye weeks really, like you said, haven't helped the teams. This is the first year that three teams that had to bye actually made it through.
yeah.
I think the Phillies just imploded, which was shocking to me with the Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola. They should have easily swept that series, but you know, Philadelphia, will Philadelphia, I guess.
And it's weird because for the Phils too, the last couple years they got in, they didn't win their division, they got in through the wild card, and then they get further. Then this year they didn't really have to worry about Atlanta too much. They win the division. Everyone says, "Oh, the Phillies are great," and they were. And then look what
Yep,
happens to them. Yeah, they lose first round when they had a few days off. So it
yep,
is interesting how that's worked out. But yeah, you're right. A couple of those top seeds have made it through this year, and I guess we shall see what happens.
yep. And I think we can close it out there unless you have anything closing that you want to mention. I mean, hockey's going on. We have Bulls are going to be kicking off or tipping off in, end of this month. So NBA will be back. We'll do a little breakdown on that in future podcasts.
Yeah, I'm not super excited about the Bulls season, but I'm
No.
always happy to have some basketball come back. It's always fun. And I'm more excited more for college basketball. That's kind of my
Yeah.
forte. But yeah, it's always good to have the basketball season come back and see who's good and who's not and all that.
Yeah. I think Kansas, they released the top 10 or top 25, and Kansas was number one overall. North Carolina's 9. So
What about the Dukies?
let me get that for you. Let me find out while we're still talking, but hopefully they're not ranked high, but we all know they will be
They were
because
supposed to have one or two top recruits coming in, I
they
think,
got
this year.
yeah, Cooper Flag. That's the guy who's going to go number one in the draft next year.
Okay.
So you'll enjoy him. He's awesome. He played on Team USA. They are ranked 7th.
Oh,
So it
okay.
goes Kansas, Alabama, UConn, Houston, Iowa State, Gonzaga, Duke, Baylor, and North Carolina, and Arizona to round out the top 10. Rest, if we left out your team, I'm sorry, but don't care.
Okay, that's a solid top 10.
Yeah. But yeah, your two guys that you want to look at obviously is, um, you have Cooper Flag, and then obviously Mason Gillis came back. He's a senior, so you got the senior leadership. And then there's one guy that they grabbed. He's a freshman. I think his name is Malak. He's like 7'2", 250. So
Oh,
he's a banger. So you'll enjoy him too. We'll see how quickly he gets out on the court. But yeah, Duke does scare me a little bit more this year than they have in years past. But North Carolina always finds a way to beat them, and we actually do play Kansas at Kansas. um, Not the opening game for the series for the season, but on 11/8. So on November 8th at 6 p.m.
okay.
I
We're
mean, we
getting
brought
ready.
back. Yeah, RJ Davis is back. Just real quickly, RJ Davis, our senior guard. He's going to break some records for them this year, just with points. They have no more Baycott, so we're going to have to rely on
Yeah.
a lot of young talent out there. But you have Jalen Washington. He's back. He's a junior. Elliot Cadeau. He's a sophomore. Played a lot of minutes. Can't really shoot the ball that well, but he's a pretty good point guard. Seth Trimble, he was electric too. He was actually supposed to transfer out, but came back. But yeah, so we'll see. I love, like you said, I love college basketball just as much as I think you do. So yeah,
Can't
we'll
wait.
break that down a little bit further though for you guys.
That'll be a good one.
Yep. All right. Think you'll like us.
Boom.